Chapter 25, The Solo Temporaries, January 2003. Before Christmas, I worked 50 to 70 hours a week. After, I knew I'd be facing 80 to 100. I threw the switch undaunted. In fact, I was exhilarated. We busied ourselves setting the thing up in the first half of the month. We called a bunch of ATF agents and ended up securing 3 for duty. Steve Gundo Gunderson, Alan Footy Fatubo, and a hotshot from San Diego, Jesse Summers. Each brought something to the table. Jesse was young and hard, appearing more Latino gangbanger than anything else. Footy was enormous, 6'4", 285 pounds, and had an easygoing personality that both frightened and attracted people. Gundo, an academy mate of mine, who was 10 years older than I was a crafty old school UC, a classic, straight up operator who everyone, good and bad, couldn't help but like. While Slats, Timmy, and I briefed our peers, JJ and Pops were busy with the monitor of hosting and outfitting 3 new solos. They lined up rental bikes, a couple of motel rooms, and most important, created the cuts and made them look authentic. Our aim was to have the guys up to speed as soon as they hit Arizona, which will be on January 28th. I also equipped the Phoenix undercover house on Romney Road with some new props. My 3-foot-long iguana, Spike, hadn't been getting the love he needed from the Dobbins clan, so I brought him up from Tucson. Once Spike got to the house, I realized that he should have a friend. For some reason, one of the task force agents was selling the nameless 8-foot boa constrictor. I bought him and his huge glass tank for $100. We ramped up our contacts after mid-January. Timmy and Pops went out with Bad Bob and the Mesa boys one night. Bob announced there'd be no more drugs in the clubhouse. No selling, no buying, no using. The guys said fine. Bob said that there'd been too much of that lately. Then Bob took Timmy and Pops aside and asked, "By the way, you guys got any party favors?" Apparently, the rule didn't apply to him. Timmy later told me that he had to stifle a chuckle by coughing into his hand, and Pop said he couldn't even believe it. Not much else happened until a show came to town on the 28th. Slats rolled out the equivalent of an undercover red carpet for the temporary solos, grilled New York strips, ice cold cokes, and a makeshift casino in the patch, craps and blackjack tables, and a roulette wheel. I tried to get JJ to dress up like a showgirl, but she told me to fuck off. We gambled quarters and laughed and ate. Around 10, I suggested we go for a ride. Everyone was game. As we saddled up, Slats yelled, "Take it easy tonight. We got a big week." I said, "Got it." "No clubhouses, only soft spots." "Got it." "You got no cover." "Got it." We left. I knew these guys were up for anything, so I immediately violated Slats' orders. We headed to the Desert Flame, a strip club owned by a new Mesa prospect named Big Time Mike. We rolled in 7 deep, counting JJ. Big Time Mike asked, "What's up?" "Big Time, these are my solo brothers, Jesse, Footy, and Gundo." Big Time asked us what we'd have, and I told him. After serving us, he said, "You guys should go over to Mesa. Some guys are there. They'd love to see you." Before I could say anything, he called, spoke to them, and hung up. "It's all set. They're expecting you." "Cool, dude." I pulled Gundo and Footy aside and asked, "What do you think?" "We won't go over there if you're not comfortable yet." "You heard Slats. He doesn't want us doing anything like this." Both said without hesitating, "Hell with that." There was no way a room full of angels was going to outdo the 7 of us. My confidence soared. Mesa Angel Alex Davies met us at the gate and showed us inside. It was a small group. Nick Nunzo, Mark Krupa, Casino Cal, Paul Eisenshade, and some prospect I'd never seen. Then he said, "Let's go next door." He meant the members only section of the house. For the first time, we went next door. The decor was more of the same, except there was a great concentration of lounging furniture, a couple of couches, 4 overstuffed chairs, a low coffee table with nonsense scratched all over it. Alpha, I Heart, The Hells Angels, Mesa Rocks, and Jail Death and Pussy. They'd been on the case for 12 hours and they were already performing like A-list actors. For the first time in months, I was able to sit back and enjoy myself as my partners worked the room. Nick must have seen me looking at him because he sheathed his knife and came over. He blurted out, "Fuck Bob." It was the meth talking. I didn't say anything. He repeated, "Fuck that guy." Cal came over and sat down. Nick sat down. He bounced one of his legs and spoke fast. "Shit ain't right around here, Bird. I'll tell you." Guys are splitting. The guys in this room, we want to be an outlaw. The guys in this room, we want to be outlaws. Bob and Whale and Crow, those old folks, they want us to take it easy. He spit on the floor. We want to be outlaws. Like you guys, you know? They took me aback. The Mesa Hells Angels wanted to be like us, like solos. Nick sniffled hard. Cal took over talking. Listen, Bird, we want to do business with you, but we got to take it slow because we don't want Bob knowing. He's hoarding you guys. He's paranoid and he's greedy. And he's keeping all the good shit to himself. Nick broke in. Shit. You know how many times I seen that fat fuck break his own drug rule? Man, I ain't got enough fingers. I nodded. They offered JJ and me a bump, and I reminded them that I don't do that anymore. JJ said, no thanks, not as long as Bird is my old man. Anyway, Nick said, snorting it himself, not everyone is Bob's boy here anymore. Some shit is fucked up around here lately. This was good and bad for us. We had the opportunity to exploit some club weaknesses, but we had to keep Bob happy. Under no circumstances could any of us undermine his authority. I told Nick and Cal that we were always interested in business opportunities, but I didn't mention Bob, nor would I say anything to him. I decided to string them along and see how everything shook out. I had to do it this way. If I ratted, Bob would know, but he'd also know if I was a rat. If he found out later that I knew, then I'd come clean, but I'd add that I didn't want to be the guy to tell him. I'd have to shift the blame onto Nick and Cal for putting me into a bad spot. I knew Bob would understand and respect this reasoning. It was the only honorable course of action. We left not too long after that. We couldn't stay late. Slats was right. The solos huddled around him in the living room of the undercover house. Oranje music blaring from some lowrider outside. I waited in the kitchen for my cue. Timmy saying, "What the fuck are you looking at, prospect?" I lit a smoke and sauntered in, my serial killer cap pulled low over my eyebrows. Jesse sat in a folding chair in the middle of the room. I paced tightly in front of him, never traveling more than 4 feet. I stared him down. He swung his knees back and forth. I sucked my smoke. Everyone was lined up, arms crossed, and bore down on Jesse with scowls. "I'm not gonna waste your time, prospect, and I sure as hell ain't gonna waste the time of any of my brothers or esteemed guests. I hear from your sponsor that you don't do shit, and when you do shit, you don't do it right. I asked your sponsor over there," I thumbed at Footy, "and he says you can't even open a beer right, let alone do something more complicated like gas up a bike. God forbid he asked you to do something real, something any one of the men in this room could do without thinking." "Bullshit," I barked. He didn't flinch. I pretended not to like that. I leaned in close. I placed my hands on my knees. I spoke quietly. "Bullshit, prospect. If you're a pussy." And Footy stepped forward and gave Jesse his patch, at which point we all cheered and Jesse let out a big fake breath. Bob was transfixed. Later he told me it had been the best patch ceremony he'd ever been to, except for this one where the new brother accidentally got shot, he added, laughing. Then came the Solo Angels barbecue in honor of the Arizona Hells Angels. Crazy scene, Mexican gangsters and Hells Angels co-mingling like we were in a prison yard in the desert. Gundo was a piece of work. He learned long ago that it was best to just be himself in the undercover world. Along with his cut, he wore light gray corduroys, a white button-down shirt, a plain green baseball cap, and running sneakers. Except for his haircut and his jacket, he looked like an average guy at the mall. The haircut was the kicker. He'd had me shave the sides of his head, leaving a wide mohawk on the top. He called it the look of the seahorse. I walked through the kitchen at one point during the party to find Gundo nonchalantly holding the clothing of a naked man. A few angels stood around him, looking him up and down, their arms crossed. I asked Gundo what was up. "No one knew this guy," he said. "I wanted to make sure he wasn't mic'd up." The guy looked humiliated and frightened. I had no idea who he was. Well, unless they got mics and dicks these days, I think he's clean. "Give him his clothes back, alright?" Gundo smiled the same smile I'd seen him give his wife 100 times. "Was just about to do that, Bird." Bad Bob had witnessed the strip search and came over to ask what was going on. Gundo explained to him, "Bob, you're our guest at this party. Your safety and the safety of your brothers is my responsibility while you're here. Someone shows up and no one knows him, then he's going to get shaken down by me until I'm satisfied he's not recording you, not photographing you, and not smuggling in any hardware with bad intentions. Bob beamed and threw one of his massive tree trunk arms around Gundo's neck, catching him in the crook of his elbow. Bob turned to me and said, "I love this guy." All that was missing was for Bob to give Gundo a noogie on the seahorse. I walked through the party, shirtless, high on success. I never smiled. I had some drumsticks that I beat on everything. The backs of chairs, the backs of people. I even did a drum roll on Casino Cal's death head. I was Bird, full of nervous energy. JJ started to get tight with Nick's girl, Casey. Casey was the girl, covered in tattoos, whom Bad Bob occasionally went with. Casey dug JJ, and JJ returned the favor. Casey claimed to be a meth source for a Denver angel named Nick Pugh, as well as for Mesa. She asked JJ if she wanted to do a rail, and JJ said, "I do a rail, and if Bird finds out, I catch a beating. No way. Thanks though." Casey said no problem. JJ said she had some friends in Dago who might want some, and Casey told her to let her know how much, that she was her girl. JJ thanked her. She said she wouldn't forget. Then Casey told her she'd be willing to drive shit south for us if we needed another driver. JJ said she talked to me about it, and when I heard that, I laughed. My new prop, the snake, lived in the living room. The party thumping around me, I took the snake out of the tank and draped it over my shoulders. It was heavy and smooth and cool. It felt powerful. As I approached Bad Bob, his face went white. He pulled his knife, pointed it at the boa, and yelled, "Bird, you get that fucking thing away from me or it's going to be cowboy boots." I said, "Thanks, Bob." He asked, "What for?" "You just named my snake, Boots." The party ended, but the ride continued. Nights flowed into days, and back in the nights. We roared into Mesa on the 19th. Bob, obviously tweaking, cornered me and went off on Rudy. He was worried about him snitching again, saying he knew Rudy had a newborn at home and had talked to ATF, and maybe Rudy had made a deal to get out while this kid was still young, to spend some time with him and whatnot. On the 31st, we waltzed into the Pioneer Saloon in Cave Creek and got a full introduction over the PA. Gundo was right behind me, and after the announcement ended, he leaned into my ear and said quietly, "I don't care who these guys are, but that was fucking cool." I nodded. It was. Everyone was there. I mean everyone. Sonny, Johnny Angel, Hoover, Smitty, Joby, Bob Fang, every guy who had any kind of influence in the state. Sonny came up and greeted each one of us. And in one of the greatest moments in biker investigator history, we got a group shot with them. Just Sonny Barger and Johnny Angel in the middle of a row of solo angels, aka cops. Sonny's arch nemesis. It was a damn coup. The night of February 1st, we went to Cave Creek's clubhouse. Theirs was much bigger than Mesa's, on a more open lot in a residential neighborhood. They had a little stage with a stripper pole. A blonde with thigh-high red patent leather boots and a dirty brunette in a knit black bikini, or more often out of it, took turns twirling around the stage. All night, Joby bugged me for my silencer source. He must have heard about it from Smitty. At one point, Joby pulled me into a side room and said, "I need something, that if I was to smoke someone right here, they wouldn't hear it out there." I told him not to worry. I talked to my guy, but I had to do it my way. He respected that. Side room, I bumped into a short, roided out, live wire with a shaved head. He looked like my shorter, wider twin. Joby had moved on. The live wire asked, "What the fuck? You're fucking Bird, aren't you?" He stabbed his finger at me, tapping me hard right where the bullet had come out of my chest. "Yeah, that's right." "Shit, I'm fucking Dirty Dan, and I need to talk to you. Come with me." I followed this prison gangster to an empty corner of the clubhouse, preparing to become a human sacrifice. He turned, suddenly barking, "I heard all about you, Bird. You're some kind of crazy fucking cowboy, ain't you?" "Shit, brother, I love that." The veins bulged from his neck and his face turned red. He spat when he talked. I fed off his energy and he fed off mine. He asked about Mexico. I said I went to Mexico often. He said he'd heard there were Mongols down there. I said there were, but not too many. He said that as soon as his parole was up, he'd like to come with me, see if we could find some. I said great. He said find some and then kill him. I said awesome. He said we'd be a 2-man massacre crew. I said, "Dirty Dan, you're the kind of Hell's Angel I've been waiting to meet." He said that he liked the way I carried myself and that the club needed more guys like me. I was perversely flattered and thrilled to have stumbled onto what I considered a real deal Hell's Angel. No toy runs or public parties for Dirty Dan. Just riding and beating and fucking. Amen, brother. After several minutes, we parted company just as abruptly as we came together. We agreed to meet and work out at the gym. He yelled, "Alright, later, Bird." I yelled, "Later, Dirty Dan." We'd been in a complete bubble. Hours after that, when we were winding down at the UC house, Gundle told me that when Dan and I started talking, all eyes turned to us. Our body language looked overly confrontational. Gundle said, "Man, I thought you two were gonna hit the deck." I was leaning against the bar with my hand on my gun, getting ready to pull out. I thought we were about to be in the middle of an ass-beating shootout. I laughed and said, "You kidding me? That guy kicked my confidence up about 1,000 notches. I fucking love that guy." February 2nd, the Solo Angels, Hells Angels, Love Fest had one more engagement, the Florence prison run. It was the anniversary of my first run the previous year, when I was a bullhead nobody riding with Mesa Mike. Oh, how the world had turned. The main drag in town was choked with bikes. We hung out at Yolanda's bar, drinking light beer and bullshitting. A band played. Ghost took the stage and sang a song. He was pretty good. Everyone was happy to be there. We rolled onto the desert, all 2,000 plus of us. The cops could do nothing but watch, and it was glorious. No longer relegated to the back of the line, we were fully integrated into the Hells Angels' thundering column. We rumbled through the dust, all the colors of the clubs flying. We were surrounded by our red and white brothers, the 8 ones. All the Arizona Hells Angels charters were there. Nomads, Cave Creek, Mesa, Tucson, Phoenix, Skull Valley. Beyond them were all the states and many of the countries with Hells Angels charters. We banked wide around a turn and passed the yard. JJ casually slung her arms around my waist and I gunned forward, the orange jumpsuits standing at attention while we yipped and yelped like pound dogs. Timmy, Pops, JJ, and I all had orange bandanas wrapped around our heads. They were the same color as our jumpsuits. I screamed as loud as I could, "Orange Crush, Orange Crush, Orange Crush." Timmy joined in. It was for the guys locked up, but really it was for us, our little inside joke. We were the Solo Angels, Nomads. Our colors were black and orange, and we were the Orange Crush. No one heard us though. The bikes were too loud, and we were rolling too strong. This undercover scam had become my life. An ex-partner of mine used a baseball analogy to explain successful undercover work. In baseball, if you hit a 250, you're an everyday player. You hit a 300 and you're an all-star. Approach 400 just for one season and you're a lock for the Hall of Fame. The same percentages gauge a UC success. One that goes out and gets good intelligence 30 or 40% of the time is a rock star. I was batting 1,000% with the Angels, and I was being corrupted by success.